Oh, and just to check, have you guys read the facilitator guide?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So slides are still like there's still more we can do in terms of polishing and upgrading, but the main thing here is that that the skeleton of the workshop is in place, and based on your feedback, then we can still make changes. So this is a chance to introduce ISIC and Source Institute. The main thing here is not to really sell either organization. It's really just to introduce them in a way that builds credibility of the day that's about to come. So so to point out that, hey, we're ISIC and we're delivering this deep dive today, and ISIC is an organization that's been around for this long, that helps build leadership, has a set of programs, and this is a new one we're trying out, and then it's developed by Source Institute, and Source Institute specializes in teaching technology entrepreneurs around the world, and in very specific, extreme, and fast-changing contexts. And this program it's also worth pointing out, this program was originally designed for Oxford University Career Services, to allow those students to get a sense of entrepreneurship and build some entrepreneurship skills if that's where they wanted to go in their career. So all of these things kind of build up the day that's about to come, and don't really expand on either thing too much, or try and sell the organization. And actually, this just reminds me as an aside. So we've been working with AI, or at least the idea was to put together a partnership with AI to develop and work with you guys. But basically, the way this has gone, it's largely been us working quite independently. And there's a lot of things. So we're going to move towards a way of working with ISIC, where this is a source project. Deep Dive is a source project with a source-run community. And ISIC is, we're now looking at modifying the arrangement. We're coming back at it with an arrangement where it's more of an alliance with ISIC. And that will mean that basically all of the questions around how does this fit in as an ISIC product, these are all questions that now basically go directly to AI, because you guys are asking us, and we don't have the answers. And AI is not exactly managing this in a way that allows us to hand off or pass those questions on to them. We don't know the answers, and we can't do anything with that. So so we think that this alliance model might be better. So that said, so I'll just go through the slides really quickly. Most of them are designed that you just sort of read them off. So today, this is what you're going to learn, just 2 big categories, and we're going to cover it in 4 sections. So just go over this. The purpose of this slide is for some people in the room, the term startup might not have been, they might have heard it, but not really know the definition. So this allows people to sort of get a bit of context and sort of insight in a buzzword. So a new technology that's looking for a way to scale up quickly. But then we say, today we're going to relax it. And this is one of the big tone things about this workshop is really being inclusive. It's not to say, you're not doing a startup, so therefore this is wrong. It's more like, hey, if you have a business idea, let's learn this skill and apply it to it. And we're all learning together and so on. So this is a sense to sort of give them some inside knowledge, but then immediately open it up and be inclusive. Each of those 4 sections starts with a slide that says goal and ends with a slide that says lesson learned. So you kind of know where your start and stops are. And again, you just sort of set this up to say, okay, in this next section, what we're going to do for the next hour is really start to think like entrepreneurs. And in order to do that, we have to reflect on how we think now and how we will change. Every slide that has something green in the top right corner is a reminder for you that this one is an interactive slide. So anything that doesn't have this, you just make the point and you move on. There's nothing else to do here other than make this point. And then this is a reminder that, so like, does anyone here have business experience or know experienced founders? Some people might want to tell some stories. Some people might just put their hands up. That's okay. So then we dig into a more meaty question, which is, what's the difference in mindset between a first-time founder and an experienced founder? What's important to each of them? And again, you sort of pause, let people reflect. You might need a little bit of prompting here at first to get the ball rolling. Things like, so does anybody know a founder? You guys put your hands up. Who is it? Tell us about that person. And you just start. The idea here is to get this momentum going of getting them talking first to you and then to each other. So once they've sort of reflected on that and shared a bit, so among them, of the first-time entrepreneurs or the experienced entrepreneurs, who values their business ideas more? And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. We're just getting them to reflect on what they believe. Now, there's a flow here where there's obviously an answer that we want to hear, or that we would say is like sort of an answer where like that we would like them to answer, because then we get one of the main points. But as a facilitator, we don't want to push too much. We just kind of want to say, like, who values their ideas more? And if everybody says, hey, experienced entrepreneurs, and you're like, okay, great. If everyone says it's first-time founders, you're like, okay, great. And then you just move on. Who values their time more? And again, this is the same thing. You get them to reflect. And as these questions progress, they get, we are kind of just narrowing down. We're guiding them along in their own thinking. So who values their time more? This tends to be more often that people will say experienced entrepreneurs, and then say, okay, well, first-time entrepreneurs tend to feel like their business ideas are valuable and need to be protected. Is this true with the people you know? And just a point here on these slides, it says discuss up here, and then this one says question. So question is more meant to be like a very quick pointed question that you're just pushing out to the audience, and you just want to, you want them to react, but you want them to react quite quickly. Whereas a discussion, you want to sort of see if you can pull out deeper thinking and start to get them to talk to you and talk to each other. So then we go to the next question. Experienced founders have too many ideas and not enough time. Is this true? And you can see here that what we're kind of doing is now we're trying to make a point. And even if this contradicts what they said before, quite often then they might go, yeah, it does. Or even if they don't, they say, no, it's not true for me. It's still fine. The important point is that they're reflecting on these things. And then we go into misconceptions. So we say a lot of reasons why people don't start, and they sort of say stuck in this first time mode or this pre-first time mode, is that they have these misconceptions about the reasons in their head, basically, that they think they can't start because. And what we know from experienced entrepreneurs is that you don't need to have a great idea to start. You don't need to protect the idea. You don't need to learn anything new before you start, and you don't need to take big risks. Right? So all of these things are false, and don't let them stop you. If one of these reasons is the reason you haven't started, what you're going to learn today is going to help you see that it's no longer necessary, and you can actually just start. So then here, did anybody here learn to ride a bike from a diagram? And then everyone goes, no. Can you learn to ride a bike from a diagram? No, right? Probably not. And the thing is, we learn by doing, and entrepreneurship is like riding a bike. It's you have to learn it by doing. Diagrams aren't really going to help you that much. And one of the first things in terms of experiencing life as an entrepreneur, especially working like an experienced entrepreneur, is working in a way where you know your time is valuable and you're managing your time very, very effectively. And so it's all about decision making, and that's what we're going to learn today. And the way we're going to learn that is through pace and rhythm. So this is a warning that says basically we're going to be using timers all day, and it's going to force you to make decisions quickly, and that's good. That's part of learning how this is done. And then these are just a reminder for any questions. A quick technical note: if you hit Shift P on any slide, you get the speaker notes. And most of the speaker notes are empty for now, but we can add them based on your feedback, or if you wanted to add them, you can send them to me, or even update the code if you want. It's on GitHub. I can show you how to do that. But one of the main points on these any question slides is that here we have a whole bunch of videos of, and this is from one of our programs interviewing successful technology entrepreneurs from across Africa. And one of the big idea here is that you're, as a facilitator, you're not meant to stand up there and say, hey, I'm an expert entrepreneur. And especially at the beginning, like you can set up set expectations that that you're there as a facilitator, that you've just had this experience yourself, and you found it useful, and you now are going to guide them through. But it's sort of us figuring it out together, rather than I'm the expert who has all the answers. And that means that when somebody has a question that is about being an entrepreneur, rather than answer it yourself, it's better to say, oh, actually, there's a short video on that I can show you. There's entrepreneurs who have had this experience, and let's hear from them directly. And in the long run, the idea is to regionalize these videos. So have, so for example, with ISIC alumni, going to some of those entrepreneurs and interviewing them and creating similar videos depending on the region, so it feels closer to home. But these ones are quite compelling stories, and they're quite social enterprises as well. So for example, if someone says, how do I get money? There's getting to investment. Or if they say like, how do I grow a team? Or how do I set up my company with my partners? Or what about risk? There's video answers here for you. And they're between sort of 2 and 5 minutes, these videos. Any questions from you guys so far?
No, so far everything is clear.
Okay. So at the first stage, you only need to get 2 things right with your business: your vision and your starting point. And so the remainder of this module is around these 2 things. So your vision is who do you want to help, and what do you want to help them do? Then we say, let's start. So now here's an action. If you click the 90 seconds, it loads up a timer. And you can just close that window. And again, these slides are designed to be really so that you have to know the main arc of the day. But they're really step-by-step slides. So this is designed for you to basically show up and not know the slides very well and just hit next and go. And it's like, okay, so we need paper and pens now, guys. So it does take 90 seconds, grab paper and pens. It sort of takes you through step-by-step and is designed to help keep the workshop in flow. There's a lot of slides. And the key point here is go quickly. So every time there's something here, you just say it and you move on. So here you say it, get paper and pens, guys. 90 seconds, go. As soon as they have it, you just hit next. Okay, now let's hear from Mohammed Yunus. Every video that we set up, we're going to set up who's coming. So this is your chance to give them a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of context. So this is the guy who created microfinance. He created Grameen Bank, which is the bank that led the microfinance paradigm in the world, and he got the Nobel Peace Prize for that. You watch the video, he talks about leadership and vision and how they're connected. And then you hit next, and you're like, okay, so now write down your vision on a paper with a felt. So having just heard Mohammed talk about this, fill in the blanks. And so you get them to write on a one page with a felt pen, like a big poster. I want to help blank, this wide group of people, achieve something important in their life, blank. So whatever, so these green things replace with whatever your vision is. 2 minutes, go. And then once they have, so they'll all have visions written on a piece of paper. Then, so now we go into team formation, and you just explain point by point. So this is just designed so you can read each thing out, and people then don't read ahead. So you'll each have 30 seconds to present your vision. Afterwards, you'll take your sheet and you'll post it on the wall somewhere in the room so people know where to find you. And you're going to form teams of 3 or 4 people. So if you can't find 2 people on a team, join another, and you'll have 20 minutes to talk about this. Next. Oops. Next. Let's start presenting. Who's first? And then you have a 30-second timer here for each presentation. So you pump them through those. So this is one thing. There's a bit of a gambit here. There's a joke around, and it helps to like build this one up and sell it a bit. So when you let a kid make a sandwich, they do all these things, name all the ingredients, name all the crazy stuff they do, and then punchline, it's a bad sandwich. So don't do what a kid does. Don't make a kid sandwich out of your ideas. And the whole message here is they're just about to go meet each other and talk to each other about what teams they form. The moral of this story before they do that is don't try and merge your visions into one messy vision. Keep it simple. And it's better to work on somebody else's vision as they've written it, or a simple version, than it is for you to try and mix them together, because that will just make it difficult for you to make a business fail. So now you have 20 minutes to find your team. Go, start the timer. So then you pull everyone back in, and so it's sometimes hard, depending on the group. Sometimes they're done within less than 20 minutes and it's easy to pull them in. Whenever there's an interactive exercise like this, you want to walk around the room and overhear and coach a little, but you want to know what's going on in the room. Sometimes people are rushing. So as you know, it's 5 minutes left, point out, hey, if you haven't found a team yet, you have 5 minutes. If you're still holding out for somebody to join your team, maybe it's time that you find another team, that kind of thing. And if a lot of the teams have formed, they're going to be like very chatty at this point. So they're already going to be talking about a lot of stuff. And so sometimes it's hard to pull them in. In this case, one thing that's nice to say is, guess what, guys? All of your ideas that you're talking about right now are bad ideas. That usually gets their attention. And it's like, so come in and let me tell you why. And the reason why is that your starting point, so we talked about vision, so now we move on to starting point, and your starting point is a match between the customer group that you're targeting and the product that's right for them. And you can choose both. And in fact, you need to change both until you find a match. And that's why this idea of starting with anything, like all ideas are bad ideas when you start. It's because usually you don't have the right starting point, but trying and just going with it allows you to change either the product or the customer. So, and then these are all just designed to be read. So with most startups, the starting point isn't what you think. Question: what was specific about Facebook's starting point? And you're just throwing this out. Now, you know the answer is Harvard University. Usually people get to the point where like, oh yeah, it was university students. And you go, yeah, it was even more specific. They started at Harvard. What was specific about their starting point? And then people usually notice the Amazon logo. And it was books. Good starting point. Again, this one is just designed to be read. And then we go into video. So let's hear from Derek, who created a $200 million company. And then we quiz basically on what we just heard. So what was his vision? And did anybody hear his specific words? All right. And so his specific words were helping musicians do whatever they need to release a CD. So very much trying to help musicians in this particular thing in their life. And then what was his starting point? And people often get to a website here, but in fact, it was even more specific than that. It was a link at the bottom of his band website. So it was a very simple product. It was literally a link on an existing website for his own band. And then, as we've been digging into what Derek says, the end of the video, this is one of the main points to take away. Success comes from persistently improving and inventing, not from pushing what's not working. So So persistence doesn't look like this, it looks like this. Whatever your idea is, you start it, and then you just keep trying different starting points until you find one that gets you to that market pull, which we described in an earlier slide. So we're going to apply this. So in your teams, you have 2 minutes now. Fill in the blanks, write on a piece of paper as a team, agree on this as a specific, and this time you're going with specific customer type. I need a product so that I can, and then whatever that goal is in their life. And then you set the timer, give them 2 minutes. Then you pull them back in and you say, today we're going to sell information. Again, you just, so some examples are like online courses, tutorials. Information products are easy to start and change and often open the door for other products later. So the main idea here is that an information product is an easier business to start than a more complicated app or and almost any other kind of business. It's an easy product to develop, it's an easy product to change, and it usually still fits the customer's goals. And if you're not successful at this, it's probably a sign that you don't understand the customer well enough, which is great because you've just spent a bit of time writing a book or a tutorial file. Even if you got to that stage, it wasn't a huge investment and you still have time to keep going. But if you are successful, or when you find success with an information product, now you have a customer base to build on, and it's a lot easier to then do something more sophisticated later. And there are quite a few examples of companies that have started this way. So your information product still helps your customer do whatever that something is. So now we give them 1 minute and we go back and we just get them to change the product part to a product. So what type of information product would plug in to that statement that you just wrote? And so we're getting them to start to think now about a different starting point that is an information product. And then we wrap up this section. So it's just basically about exploration and discovery. And then we go into any questions. So this whole section, including team formation, should take about an hour. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Okay, break. Breaks are actually super important here, because we generally, if you try and push, if you start to like take longer in your slides or slow down, often you'll find you end up working in like a tough room that's really warm. Like environmental control is super important. It's a huge way to improve someone's experience and their ability to engage and retain knowledge. But if it's just a slow room, take longer breaks and actually cut out more from the workshop. So this is designed for you to be able to skip stuff if you need to. So now we've gone through thinking like an entrepreneur. Now we're moving on to understanding customers' needs. So we set this up. So this is learning from customers to design your product. And this is an important point. We don't have a product yet, but we can still learn from customers in order to help with that design. So what we're going to cover now, read this off. To learn fast and best helps to know what type of learning you're doing. So this whole concept is around the scientific method and different types of learning in different places. So generally there are 3 types of learning. You observe, so step back and observe. Then there's something that you might notice, and then you'd want to investigate that. And then you start to believe in certain things, and you want to then run experiments to confirm those beliefs. And then so you point out that this is the same with science. And then it's the same with spies. There's a small blog post I wrote on this, but basically the whole James Bond story doesn't really happen. What really happens is intelligence agencies separate detection and they collect facts, and then they analyze them. And if they find something, then they investigate. And then through that investigation, sometimes they need to respond or intervene. And the same is true with selling. You research your customers, you don't target everybody. Then when you walk in the door, even though you've targeted and researched them, you don't just try and like get them to write a check. You still ask questions. and then once you're confident that you understand them, then you know what to do to close the deal. And for new businesses, it's also the same. So have we found the right customer? Do we understand that needs? And then do we have the right product? So now this is another setup for an entrepreneur video. And so this is sort of a cautionary tale about not understanding your customers. So pointing out that this is eventually a success, but and sort of implying that what we're about to hear is not going to sound like a success. So there I am. The video is about the USB key story. And then here you just recap. So it helps you get the right sales pitch, it helps you get the right product, and it helps you get the right customer. And if you want to get a bit more engagement in here, you can then use this to quiz on what they just heard. So like, how did Salim's sales pitch change? How did his product change? How did his customer change? And then the conclusion is that Salim had the wrong product because he had the wrong customer. And all right, so all of the work that I had done was in the wrong direction because I thought I should be focusing on high-end hotels, when actually I should be focusing on 2 and 3 stars. So moral of the story, running experiments without first understanding is like shooting blind. So how do we make sure ours are on target? Take off the blindfold, right? How do we learn what really matters to our customers from the start? We focus on getting the facts. Hard facts are like landmarks. You know where you are so you can decide where to go, and then you build up. So the whole point of these types of questions when we talk to customers is they give you an understanding of the customer that allows you to respond with the right product. And the 3 rules are past, read these off, fact, read, not opinions because opinions change, specific, not general, blah, blah, blah. Then you recap, and then you bring this back to the point about the type of learning we're doing. This applies to observation and investigation. And the other thing we need are conversation starter questions. So this gets them talking about a goal in their life. So for a couple examples there, a little tip here, if they don't want to talk about that thing, that's good information for you because it tells you that that thing is probably not interesting to them. So a product doing that thing is probably not interesting to them. And then a tip on building credibility in order to direct the conversation. So then you recap. So to understand customers, you ask about their life using conversation starters. Those build momentum and get them talking. And then actionable questions would then direct the conversation towards actionable facts. And what we have, that is exploration. So here we do a demo of, let's say we're in this scenario and we're interviewing a supermarket manager because we have some idea about some kind of like introducing regional or local food products in the in supermarkets. So we start with easing into the conversation, and here I just start reading them out. So do you have a minute to help me? I'm a student researching blah, blah, blah. And so what I'm going to ask you guys here is as I ask different questions, I'm just going to ask you to yell out, are they actionable or are they bad? I'm just taking some notes. So can you please tell me about the last time you introduced a new product? Is this actionable or is this bad? And then people just yell out. Sometimes it takes a bit of goading at this stage to get them going. Guys, yellow. And the idea with this whole section is it'll slow down if you let it slow down. It'll get into deep conversations if you let it get into deep conversations. What you really want to do here is move really, really fast. So this section works really well when you just inject a ton of energy into it and just get them to think fast on their feet. It's like, guys, I need you to think really fast. Is this actionable or not? Hands up, actionable. Hands up, not actionable. Okay, and then boom, move on. So he says, we hear about new products. So we see it as actionable, it's green. We hear about new products from a head office. We usually get around 2 or 3 months notice before we start selling them. Next slide. Does this happen frequently? Is this actionable or not, guys? Okay. Oh, no, it's not really. Okay, you just stopped us here. What are the 3 rules of actual questions? So then question slide. get them to list them out, see if anybody knows. If not, tell them. So this is a bad one because it's not past, fact, and specific. So let's fix it and try again in the discussion. So you get them to throw out different ideas. And every time they throw out an idea, you're like, okay, let's apply the 3 rules. This is past, fact, specific. And no matter what their ideas are, like, okay, great, moving on. So now I ask, when does this pop up? Is this actionable or not? No, still too general. He said not too often. We need to get into the specifics. When was the last time this went off track? Is this actionable or not? Yay, it is. Right. And he says this, and now we see we're getting onto something. So great stuff. We found a problem. Go deeper. How do you deal with this problem? Actionable or not? Thinking. No, actually, you just said we don't. You shut us down. So how do we fix this? Discussion, right? And again, people by now are getting the point of past, fact, specific, but you're guiding them along. How did you deal with this last time? All right, and this is good. So now he tells us, and we say, see what asking for specifics can reveal. Now we're learning. Knowing what they tried tells us how they see the problem and what it's worth to them. Can you show me how you did it? Is this actionable or not? And then you go, oh, actually, so people will go, no, it's not. And you jump and you're like, actually, it is actionable. Look what he said. Here it is. You can see I visited some of the farms myself and took. So this is an interesting point. Or blah, blah, blah. He goes on to this, and then you move on to the next slide. And this is sort of the fact that this was kind of a trick. So showing is almost better than telling, and it's the heart of observation. So even though it's not past fact specific, it's still actionable in a sense because you're observing something to real actionable facts. So that rule doesn't, past fact specific doesn't always apply, but once you get advanced, you can, as long as you're observing, you'll be on the right track. When did you go to the farm? Is this actionable or not? Now, by then people are like, is this a trick? I don't know. Don't spend too much time on this. Just whatever they say, you move on. Actually, this one is good because asking why puts in the mindset of the learner. We've got to think like an apprentice. Our job is to be an apprentice of this customer and learn their life. And we see his answer. It's a good answer. How much would you pay? Actionable or not? Not. It's an opinion and it's future. We want to make this question give you actionable facts. Next slide. So basically see, there's nothing green on the top corner, so I'm just hitting next as soon as I'm done making the point. What you really want to know is what it's worth. So ask about their life. How much did this cost you? Is this actionable or not actionable? Right, and so you've kind of set them up to get this one right. And by the way, like a lot of this is not to beat them up about getting it wrong, because we don't expect them to get it right at first. So we want to be generally, if they've got if they're getting it half right, you want to be really encouraging that they're starting to get it and then build on that and say, that's great, but we can do better. And so this one is like, by this point, this whole like yell out actionable or bad is starting, it'll start to wear down. And notice at this point, there's just no discussion. It's just like, we've just kind of set it up, and then how much does this cost you, actionable or not? And most people will start to get, okay, this one is actionable, this past fact specific. And so now you just go through these slides. Now you're in the mindset of a learner. And then you wrap up. You're like, you guys are getting it. But the point here is that conversation is a skill. And it's not just about asking the right questions. It's also about knowing how to listen. Then we get into another video setup. And again, this, hang on a second. This is a 2-minute video. And basically all of these videos by now, what we want to point out is that we're hearing from real entrepreneurs who have also been through this experience. This is a very typical journey for most entrepreneurs. So as they're going through this experience in the room, which is a simulation, we're sort of giving them this parallel path of hearing different entrepreneurs who have been at these different stages. So now we're going to really get into how to hear or actually this slide should be, I'll move it over. It should be just before here. But anyway, so it's now we get into how to listen. So up next, how to hear, how to write it down, and how to analyze it. So again, you just read these slides, and what you really need to be good at listening is obstacles, goals, and actions. There's a lot of repetition here. Obstacles, digging into what that is. Goals, digging into what that is. Actions, digging into what that is. Repeating. Again, it's just the repetition here is to build up the mnemonics so people hold this in their head. And then just reminding them that we're still in this stage of observation, investigation, and learning. So you record the exact words, and you organize them by the signals, and that way you can spot patterns later across multiple conversations. After you've talked to 10, 20, 30 customers, you're not going to remember all of those conversations. So having a record with exact words organized by signals is really starts to be very useful. And it's actually really simple. So in this case, we get them to say, like, this is every time you do a customer conversation, this is how to take notes. So put their name at the top, and then just have the 3 signals and key phrases during that conversation that came up in each topic. And so take 30 seconds right now and just grab a sheet and set yourselves up with a blank sheet. You do that, and then you go, okay, now we're going to try it. So this is where if you can get this demonstration right, as a facilitator, you're going to set up the rest of the workshop. Like this is a really pivotal point. And this is why it's important that if you can, before you put yourself in front of a room as a facilitator, if you have spent 10 hours on your idea, doing this type of interview, taking this type of notes, and then coming back, doing the analysis, coming up with product ideas, and then running experiments to see if you can get people to prepay. And if you can do several of those cycles in that 10 hours, you are going to be experienced enough to then just pick somebody out of the audience and go, hey, let's talk to you about travel. And more naturally you can do it, the better. And that sets a good example. Now, so I'd suggest you give that a try. There's some notes in the facilitation guide on some cheater questions as well that tend to be good ones. If you're not comfortable, you can load the online demo. So this is so that's just a quick demo. It's an 8-minute long demo, so you can actually cut it short in 2 or 3 minutes. The idea is, as that video is playing, you are pointing to the obstacle, goals, and actions on the slides. You can do this in different ways. So you can grab a few people from the audience and say, hey, why don't you come up here and stand next to these, and you guys both point when you hear a signal. And the rest of you guys, your job is to listen and write. And I want to see you guys writing on your sheets and practicing that. And so this 8-minute video is there in case, like, let's say you do your demo and then it didn't quite work out. You can go, okay, you can always sort of do another demo. So even an 8-minute video allows you to stop it and then do a quick check-in. And this check-in is on the next slide. So how did you do? Hold up your sheets. And you just, when everybody holds up their sheets, you can scan the room and you can see who didn't write anything down. You can see who's writing too much or too little. And now if you can coach them here from your experience, that's great. Like, so a good rule of thumb is like getting good at picking out those specific key phrases that are only a few words, because that means you don't have to write down so much, and it's still enough that you can look at that afterwards and know what was going on. And so sort of getting a hang of which key phrases to pick out to write is part of the skill building. And again, if it's in the facilitator notes, but if people are stuck, so you say, oh, hey, you didn't write anything down. What happened? And then they say, and then you turn it to the group and you're like, guys, what do you think? What could she have done in this case based on what she said? Like, how, and we just get each other to like help each other out and coach each other. And of course, jump in there and coach yourself if you have the experience and want to as well. But also if people are really stuck here, then you can always go back and load up the video or keep playing the video and say, let's practice a little bit more. So you want to sort of build up their confidence here and then get them to the point where they're doing that well. And then we move on. So this is like this matter of fact thing. Like now we've got this, we've got a sense of it. Now we're going to actually try it with real people. It's just and make it seem as natural as possible, not a big deal. Like, oh, crazy, we're going to go out and hit the street. It's really just this is everyday life for an entrepreneur. So let's do it. So again, a setup slide, just telling them what's going to come up, what's going to happen over the next 90 minutes. How well do you know your customers? So if you ask somebody to fill out one of these sheets, or if you filled out the sheet yourself without having spoken to customers yet, what percentage of what you wrote would be correct? And again, it's just a reflection exercise. There's no right or wrong answer. You just want to encourage a lot of people to yell out the numbers. And then the main point here is no matter what percent, unless you said you're 100% right, a part of that is going to be wrong, and you don't know what part is going to be wrong. So we need to find out what parts are wrong and update them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to map out our use cases, and they're already familiar with the use case. So we just describe a use case here, but we've already done this earlier. So we've already done one. Now we're going to actually come up with a lot of different ideas. So it'll end up just looking like this, which is just a sheet with a list of different use cases on it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm. So everyone grab a pen and some sticky notes. Give them 1 minute. You can click this. It loads a timer as well. So it says action, so you know that each step you want them to take action. The other slides, and they don't say action, you just hit next, because then you're just telling them what's going to come. Individually come up with 4 use case ideas in your vision. So this is individually and quietly, and you write 1 per sticky note. You'll have 2 minutes to come up with 4 ideas. Go. And now each of you has 4 ideas individually, and you're in a team of 3 or 4. So now combine them into the master list, and you have 4 minutes to do that. Now, when you drive at night, you don't need to go away, just 100 meters in front of you. In the same way, we only need to pick 1 learning goal. And so we get them to pick out of all of their use cases on the use case map, the end of each sentence should be that goal in their life. All right, so if you remember from this slide, right, they should be, each of their ideas should follow this format. And again, as they're doing this, you're circulating the room and checking that they're doing that, and coaching them if they're not. So as as a student, I need a travel app. You're like, okay, to do what in their life, right? You want to coach them on that. And so when we get here, it's like out of all of those goals on your use case map, so out of all of these end with goals in the customer's life. So find fun places when I travel, not be bored of the same places, find cheap places to have fun, tell me which are the best places to go work. Right, so all of those are goals that exist in the customer's life, with or without that product. And so you want them to pick one of those goals, and only one as a team. And you're just going to ask people about how they do that in their life right now, and you're going to have 25 minutes. And don't get too crazy about which one it is. It's not a huge discussion. You guys have 2 minutes to figure it out. Which one do you want to do first? And then we give them just to start preparing a few questions. That should have a timer on it. But just give them 2 minutes here, and then you kick them out. So you say, hey, you're going to break into groups of 2 or 3. So you're not going out as a team of 4. You're going to go out in pairs or in trios, and each of those subgroups within the team is going to aim for 3 interviews in 25 minutes. And it's really important here. Tell them, be back on time. If you're not done in 25 minutes, you come back anyway. You're going to get another try, but we're going to go on without you. So be back on time, manage your time. This is an important skill. So if you've only got 1 interview in 25 minutes, come back. It's okay. If you're in the middle of an interview in 24 minutes, start walking back and end that interview. And one more tip, ask open-ended questions. So remember, you're learning about their life. You're not talking about your idea at all. When you come back, you open a discussion about how, and this is, again, a couple-minute discussion, how did the conversations go? And you just get them to share amongst themselves. What worked? What didn't? Does anybody have any tips they want to share, or any experiences that didn't work that they think is worth sharing? Now we're going to get into analysis. You explain what's coming up. So we're going to do all of these 3 steps in the next 15 minutes. Read it out, give them 5 minutes, go. So the main point here is that that at this stage, we help each other understand the signals that they encountered. So when everybody's reading the other sheets, well, let me put it this way. And maybe this should even be a slide. The key thing here is decision-making as a team. And if you have 2 groups that went out and had 2 separate sets of conversations, if they can only act on their own experience and their own learnings, they're going to come up with 2 separate directions and 2 separate conclusions. And that's not working as a team. So what we want to do is we want to wait till we come to a conclusion until we have the raw data from the other team. And then that way, as a team, we're looking at all of the raw data together and then coming up with a conclusion together. So that's why step 1 is understanding what happened on the other team, and then updating our use case map together, and then deciding on the next learning goal. So here, this is the silent thing where we just lay out the sheets, and the teams lay out the sheets in front of themselves, and they just read them, and they just point to anything that they don't understand or needs clarification. And then the person who wrote that or was there can then explain. And now at the end of this 5 minutes, usually people want to keep going. So they usually don't feel that they've had enough time to explore and understand. And so this is where you hammer the point home. There will always be too much. There will always be too much information to go through, and there will always be not enough information to make a good decision. I'm just writing this down. I'm going to change the slide so that's clear. But you have to learn to do this in a short time period. That's part of learning to be an entrepreneur. So now we move forward. So now you're going to update your use case map. So you're going to cross off new ones, add new ones. So it's going to look like this by the time you're done with it in 5 minutes or in 7 minutes. So update your use cases, and here are the rules. And you read off the rules, and you set the timer, and you go. And then we get them to pick their next learning goal, and they have 2 minutes to do that. And then before they do that, you say, when a customer and a business owner describe this differently, who is right? Blah, 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 blah. You mentioned the thing about Salim. So who was right when Salim said that he was making a superior business center, and they said it was a USB drive problem? Again, just whatever people just yell out, it's just a point to reflect. So you meet them where they are, not where you want them to be. So blah, 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 you mentioned, make this point. And then we kick them out. And this whole thing is this time last time you did 3 interviews, this time you're doing 6. So we're doing double, and this time you have slightly less time. So you're going to have to learn to get actionable quickly. That means you end bad conversations quickly, and you just go find somebody else. And then when they're back this time, they already know the process that you walked them through step by step last time. So this time you're just going to remind them that these are the steps, and then you set the 13-minute timer and you let them go. And just a quick point here, sometimes, so like for example here, to load the timer in a new tab. In cases like this, you want to, oh, you can't do it on this computer. In that case, you want to just load a new window, and then just go e.ggtimer.com/ and then the time, because then you can put 2 windows side by side on the projector, and then they can see the time ticking down, and they can still see the steps. That's something that's thing we could improve in the future. And then they've done the analysis. So then you say, well, how much would we have to keep doing? And these are some rules of thumbs. And then we wrap up this section on understanding the customer. And then we take a break. So by the way, guys, any questions, or feel free to just jump in anywhere if you have any questions.
How much does blocks take in time?
So this is about a 2-hour block. A bit longer, actually. So it's, from this point, it's 90 minutes. Or there's a point where it says, so the idea here is that you're really punching this through. Sometimes it'll take longer than 2 hours. Like this, if you're slower at this bit, then right. So all the thing about the grocery store and then the demo, it'll take longer. So yeah, here we go. So I lost it again. There we go. So actually, I'd say for your first time, if you can get to this point in an hour, you're doing well. And then you have 90 minutes to go out and do the actual interviews, and that whole bit is going to take about 90 minutes. So by the time we're done this section, we're halfway through the day. We've gone, including breaks. You've gone around 4 hours. And you'll notice that I've done this quite a bit, depending on, so the location is super important, because if you really want a location where there's not a lot of travel time between them and real people on the street to talk to. So sometimes it'll take longer if you have a bad location. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll pick a cafe and I'll say what we're going to do is 25 minutes. I'll extend that time because there's some walking time, and I'll say we're going to meet at this cafe in this time. And usually the cafe usually doesn't like a big group coming in. Like it freaks some people out, especially if you're going to start to do a presentation in the middle of the cafe. But I usually just go in and order a bunch of coffees in advance for everybody. And then now that you're a paying customer, it's hard for them to say anything. And then I obviously don't have a projector, so I'll just talk through the slides in front of me in my computer, walk people through it. Generally, they're working in tables anyways. And that whole section takes about 20 minutes before you kick them out again. And then you meet back at the regular workshop place. Yeah, so those are some of the hacks. Oh yeah, and another hack is you saw that in like ISIC conferences and in other cases where like there's not going to be people around, like in an office park, you're not going to see very many people. But then if there's a lunchtime cafeteria type atmosphere, then what you want to do is you actually want to take a little bit longer in the morning and then drag it out so that by the time you're like in the next 90 minutes, that's around 11:30, 12. And that means that you're basically timing it so that when you say, okay, we're going out now, that's when the lunchtime rush starts. And in that case, you're delaying it on purpose, and you know that then you're going to have to cut things out at the end of the workshop in order to make up for that time. But that's totally doable. Any other questions?
No, so far not.
Okay. Okay, so now this is usually like this is either you've worked through lunch or you're coming back after lunch. People have, it's like the after lunch lull, and so people feel a bit down normally after lunch. It's a bit less energetic. So this is where you can kind of have this quiet, very empathetic. sort of like caring conversation about being an entrepreneur. And to point out that it's being hard work. And this is off the 4 main points. It's just kind of like this way to pull people back in and quietly start to reflect and then build the energy up here. And it's to give them a bit of a buffer between their lunch and getting back into something more actionable. So the whole point is you're going to be tired. There are going to be days that make you feel this tired, and the only way you're going to stay an entrepreneur is if you're being the right kind of entrepreneur that's right for your goals. And so I'll just talk through some different types, like digital nomad, a scalable startup, craftsman, build, operate, transfer. These are all different types. So and these aren't all the types, but if we look at them in detail, maybe you'll start to see what's right for you. So so these slides are, I know they're long, they're just really designed for you to read out. So, and I could probably bullet point them too, but basically these guys are the guys that they want freedom, and that's what entrepreneurship is to them, right? So they design, they develop information products. They don't even care generally like what type of information product, as long as it's making them their 2 to 5K per month. Then they just backpack around. They're just perpetually on holiday, and they have really no commitments. So they're not the types of businesses that require them to do a lot of support or to be on call or to work long hours. They figure out a few different products, and they all make, you know, hundreds or thousands per month, and together it's enough for them to be free. And that's entrepreneurship for them. Whereas a scalable startup is a very different type of thing, where these people really want to be rich. They want to do something that is huge and big, and they want to be billionaires and or, you know, hundreds of millions. Generally, if they're taking investment, you're committing your company to very high growth, and that means that you're going to work long hours for a long time, and that's just to have a ticket to play. And then there's craftsmen. So this is for people who really want to be good at something. So they like a certain activity or a certain skill. So you can build agencies. You can, so typical is an agency model here. And you also get to work on different projects all the time. You just are always doing the same thing. This is like being a really good designer, but it's also like being a lawyer or an accountant. So that's that one. And then build, operate, transfer is a bit like scalable startup, but it's one where you don't necessarily want to be a billionaire. So this is less commitment and less commitment and less risk and less money. But generally the idea here is that as companies are growing very quickly, their biggest constraint is hiring good people. So if you can then be an outsource provider for them, what you can normally do is if they're in a high growth situation, so a company like Uber, for example, this worked in Sofia recently, where Uber's Sofia development team was created by another entrepreneur. And he basically went to Uber and said, I've got a bunch of developers, I can do your development work for you. And in 2 years' time, you can buy my company at X euros per developer that you keep. And this was in 5 figures. So, so for the 2 years he was building this company up, Uber was his main customer. He was doing work for Uber. He was making profit on that work. And in 2 years, Uber said, out of the 30 people you now have, we want 18. And they just multiplied by that number they had pre-agreed and wrote a check and bought the company. And, you know, and so this local entrepreneur, you know, ends up with, with enough to buy a house in cash after 2 years of work. So these are all different things. So the whole point here is there are more types, but reflect on these questions, like how rich do you want to be? What kind of work do you want? Why are you doing this? Is it to make the world a better place, or is it just for you personally, if that's what you want? Like, these are all valid, but just choose the right thing for you. And you're gonna be tired, but when you're tired, you're gonna be happy and you're gonna push through. So that's this kind of like sort of message about entrepreneurship and life goals. So, and that's been completely like no intensity for them. You've just been talking them through this. Some people might have asked a few questions, but it's really low intensity. And now we go, okay, now, and so now usually in their heads, they're thinking, oh, okay, what type of entrepreneur would I be? And they're starting to think about that, and that's a bit more motivating. So then you go, okay, now let's get back into it. So now we're going to move into the next skill here, which is figuring out a good product. So this exercise, I think we did it. But here we just say, like, and it's ideas. So what we want here is pretend you're competing with Samsung to make the best TV. What features can you think of? And you just encourage them to come up with as many features as you can. Here, what you want to do is every time they come up with a feature idea, you write it on a Post-it note and you stick it up on a wall somewhere where they can see it. And you just build this like huge feature set as much as you can. Sometimes it takes a little prompting, right? So what about motion control? What about 3D? Think about what's happening right now. How can we make that better? Curved screens, is that the best we can do? And so you spend a minute or two just coming up with these and coming up with this amazing new TV. And then you say, okay, now we're going to just break into our groups and we're going to build a better TV for a specific customer group. So in Teams, you're going to design a TV and your job is to draw it. And you'll have a specific customer group. And the thing is that the TV you design, you only get one feature. So you have to pick the right feature for that customer group. And here again, if you hit Shift P, you'll see a whole bunch of ideas for customer groups. So this just allows you to look at it and just go and start assigning each group a different customer group. And then you set the timer and you go. And then we do a minute to present each concept. And then you throw out a question. So how many of you guys came up with a better idea than before? Like, how many of you came up with a better idea when you had this constraint of one feature and a specific customer group than when you could just do whatever you wanted? And then again, they just reflect. And then this is the main point. So every feature you add halves your speed. That's the rule of thumb. More features is more complexity, more support. It's slower to change. It slows you down. And the big corporations, they have all the advantage. They have all the money, and they have all the smart people, and they have all of the connections. So all you have is speed, and every time you add a new feature, you cut your speed in half. And so this is where a specific customer group really comes in handy. It makes you more effective because it allows you to take action. It allows you to move your business forward with a single feature, a single concept, a single idea that's easy to deploy and allows you to move quickly and change quickly if you need to. So now we have finding your starting point. We should have a more informed sense of our market. The whole idea here is matching the right customer with the right product. Again, we can change both, right? And once you've found a good fit, then you have a starting point towards your vision. So you're trying a whole bunch of different stuff to find the one that like customers are pulling from you. And the way to do that is you align with how they see their needs. So to start, every team grab a customer profile and some blank sheet of paper. This is just the preparation slide, and then move on to the next. So in the next 5 minutes, you're going to come up with 3 customer profiles. So you basically go to your old sheets from your interviews of all of those interviewed signals you had, and you're going to come up with, and then you're filling in the blanks on these on the customer profile sheets. So coming up with three customer profiles here. Let them go. Then we say, okay, so what's the right product for them? So now that you have 3 customer types, I want you to draw 3 separate sheets, 3 different products, the same way you drew the TV, except for this time, each one is going to match that customer group, and it has to be an information product. So ebooks, newsletters, reports, text message service, online courses are just examples. But but go, right? And so you set them off. And again, this one, we're pushing them a bit farther and trying to make them a bit more self-managed. So so as you're circling the room, if you're 2 minutes in the timer and you see that somebody hasn't even started writing, then you have to like get on their ass and pretty much just say, hey, you only have 3 minutes left now and you haven't started drawing. Whatever your idea is, start drawing now. You've got to go faster. And then once you have that, then you go, okay, any new ideas? So same thing as the TV exercise. You're just encouraging people to talk about, forcing them to answer a very specific customer group as defined by those specific signals. Did that make them come up with any new ideas? Because these are potentially new starting points. And then you say, well, how different were your product ideas? So between the 3 ideas you came up with, were they all the same? Or were they different? Were you really trying to differentiate them to try different starting points? And how focused were they on the specific profiles? So were they trying to generalize their idea because they still have this idea of like how big it could be in their head? And you're like, or could you do better in terms of making it more specific for that specific customer group, like just the exact right product for them? So now we move on. We talk. So we have another video with some entrepreneurs. And this is a bit of a longer video. I think it's just over 5 minutes, but this one talks through entrepreneurs who are at the point where they have the idea for their product and now they're going to customers who are keen to work with them. And how did those stories unfold? And the main takeaway, there's a lot in that video. The main thing to take away is and these are all West African startups, and in West and East Africa and Southern Africa, basically Sub-Saharan Africa, the cachet of being a startup and being an innovator, it doesn't have the same weight. So when you go to anybody, whether or not they're in a big company, the fact that you're doing a startup doesn't automatically make you something that's necessarily good in their eyes. You're still a small company and it's still risky to work with you. So the point here is that these guys found a way. They found such a strong starting point that it overcame that friction for the big company, right? It takes a lot to trust a startup, and they didn't have any other options, right? So in all of these cases, what happened was that this was such a strong need that they said, in spite of the fact that you're a small company and could go out of business and this could be a total waste of my time, I still want to work with you and give this a try. And so that's the big takeaway here. And then we wrap up, and then we break. And then we get into experiments. And so now we're getting into the 4th point. This is all these slides, you're getting a point. It's just putting it in context where we are in the day. So we have ideas and we need to figure out if they work. That's what experiments is all about. And now we're getting into this type of learning, because now our experiments should be better. The experiments we choose should be better based on the fact that we've observed and we've investigated. We have better ideas now. And if we break down experiments in a business context, it's really, there's 5 questions that you're answering. There are more, but generally it'll for this early stage, it'll fall into one of these 5. And so we design an experiment around those. So here's the question: how do architects get a building right when they only have one try to get it right? And you see if anybody in the room knows, and the answer is you prototype. So you actually do have a bunch of tries before you do the actual thing. And in a lot of ways, prototyping is like experimenting. And entrepreneurs speed up the prototypes by isolating the part they want to test. So in the same way that we see here, that if you want to test different ideas for tractor pulls, you can hack on a bunch of other stuff that does the rest, because that's not the interesting part for the experiment. And just focus on, like, does this actually till the ground? And if it doesn't work, you just cut off that bit and you stick on another bit. onto the same motorcycle front, and you can try a whole bunch of different ideas that way for cheap. And if anybody comments on this picture, this guy has won a ton of prizes. He's like one of India's sort of rising great inventors. So we want to isolate this question, and we want to attach other parts of the business we know will work in the same way we saw that motorcycle tractor contraption, right? And again, so picking these specific questions. And then reiterating the point that entrepreneurs make good decisions fast. So when we design experiments, we are designing them for fast information. We are not designing them for complete information. We are not designing them to be as accurate as possible. We are designing them to be fast. And the other point here is when you take risks as an entrepreneur, you do not you take risks you can afford to lose. This is a huge point to emphasize. Most non-entrepreneurs think about risk upside down. They think about it like a big company. They think, how big does this need to be? What research do I need to do to make sure the market is so big? Then how much risk do I have? How can I manage all of those risks? Then how much do I need to raise or collect in order for me to take that big risk? That is not how entrepreneurs take risks. Entrepreneurs go, I know it's going to be big. I don't know exactly how big, but it doesn't matter. I've got a rough idea. I know there's going to be a lot of risks along the way. I will deal with those as I get to them. But if I fail, I will still live to fight another day. I will make it so that every time I run an experiment, every time I take a risk, it is not one that if I'm wrong, it's going to knock me out of the game. So I will work within my time available. I'll work within my money available. I will work with what I've got. I work with the team I've got, whatever it is. And so then you reemphasize this point here. So when you run an experiment, you're paying for information. Think about it that way. How can you make sure that the information is as affordable as possible and then quick as possible? And the way we can now make this practical is with an experiments checklist. So does it isolate a single question? Does it answer the question as quickly as possible? And does it have a clear measurement? So let's apply this checklist to this idea. So somebody wants to build an online store to sell marble sculptures. If this was your friend's idea or your idea, and you want to run an experiment for will they find it, what would you do? What would your experiment be? And here you're just you're just encouraging them to start to talk through how they might run an experiment. And each time they come up with an idea, you simply push on it and you say, hey, can you go a bit faster? Can you do that a bit faster? Until you get it. And again, you don't want to drag it out too much, but that's kind of the what you want to push on here. And you know that after a minute or two, you just move on and you point out that the fastest way to do this is to look up on Google keyword tools how many people are actually looking for marble sculptures for sale. And you'll probably have to read out the numbers because it's hard to see, but only 18,000 people in the world search for marble sculpture on Google, and only 480 people search for marble sculptures for sale on Google. So basically, it's not anybody. It's not enough people. It's not really a business. So will people find it on Google? No. And so the reminder here is the faster you learn, the better, right? So is this totally accurate information? Well, no, but it's fast. And let's look at why that's useful, right? So so we run through the checklist for this last idea of an experiment. Does it focus on the question? Yes. Will they find it on Google? Clearly. Is it a minimal amount of time? Yeah, it's 5 to 10 minutes. And is it a clear measurement? Yes, the number of people searching every month. So this is a great experiment. Now, if you're running late on time, here's the point to skip ahead because we've done one experiment and here's where you can sort of now jump to the later graph slide, which is here, and then just wrap up because now from here on in you have 10 minutes to go to finish. But if you still have time, then you move on. So will they find it? Well, you can also, so these are just other ways you can run experiments on will they find it. So test the ad with no product. So no matter where you advertise, you can always advertise and not have the product ready. Again, you're paying for information. So you're just seeing if you can do this in an affordable way, if you can spend, especially for online advertising, you can usually try $10 or $20. And that will give you some sense of, does this work? So now we move into an exercise and we say, you've just got this sense of how to do a quick find it experiment. So now I want you guys to do your own find it experiment. And so you take the second product idea that they came up with in the previous module on product prototypes, and you say, that's the one I want you to market. So isolate the question, will they find it? Answer that question as quickly as possible, and you have 24 hours. So ideally, you want the answer in 24 hours, and you've got to have a clear measurement. And so a tip to design this experiment is look through your interview notes of what actions people took. And when they went, look for places where they were already looking for answers to their problem, because that's a good place to try. And then now we encourage people to share their experiment idea, and they have a minute to present, and then you give a minute for coaching, and again, encourage peer coaching. So just basically after they present, set a timer again for 1 minute right away, and just go, okay, let's look at the experiment checklist. Did it isolate the awareness channel and the product? Did it answer the question as quickly as possible? Did it have a clear measurement? And you get the other people in the participants to give feedback to the person who just presented, and then you do 2 or 3 of these, whatever you feel like. So now we go into a different type of experiment, a will they buy it experiment. So I have an idea for crazy toppings on pizzas. So this is things like black pudding or spaghetti or ice cream on pizza. And somebody has this crazy idea and they're convinced it's going to be the best business ever. So what would you do? How would you test? Or what would you test and how? You get people to throw out ideas. And again, you're just encouraging them to do it faster. And in this case, a lot of people will get stuck on, their mind is in how will I find it? So they're also going to test how will I find it? So they'll start to suggest things like, I could put an ad in the paper and see if people call, or I'll, sorry, they're not coming to me now, but generally that tends to be the trend that they go to, will I find it? So you want to encourage them to say that experiment is good, but it answers 2 questions: will they find it and will they buy it? So can you make this faster and more specific by just focusing on will they buy it? What can you plug in, or what can you plug your experiment into where people have already found their way to food? And the answer then, whether they get it or not, you just move on. It's a market stall. People there are there looking for lunch. And one restaurant actually did this, and that board you see in the front that says juice box, they had a board like that, and they just tried different pizza toppings every day. And that way they weren't trying to experiment of will people find my restaurant, because they knew that once they get there, they'll get there. They really wanted to know about the specific toppings of pizza. So going through the checklist, it focused on the questions of buying and putting it in an obvious place, a lunch market. It took a few weeks for them to do, because it was getting the license for the market and then getting like renting the equipment and then getting that all set up. And it measured the number of people who chose the different new pizza toppings. And again, a few other ideas. You can always sell a simpler version of whatever it is you want to sell to test if they'll buy it. You can, if it's a product, if your idea is a product idea, you can sell a service version of it. So rather than a book, you can be a consultant. So say, pay for the price of the book, it's $5, but for $5 instead, because I don't have the book, what I will do is I will be your consultant for a day. And of course, there's not a great business there, but it allows you to learn if they're ready to part with $5 to achieve that thing in their life. And if it's a large sale to a big organization, it's common that big companies will prepay small companies if it's a larger project that they have to build. And then we move on to the last one we'll do for today, which is, will it work for them? And so again, you cover this. I have a much better way for the business people. You just read this off. What would you do? How can you test the part that makes this idea unique? And this idea is a special timeline, right? So the special timeline of flight booking is what makes this part unique. So how can you test just that part? Get them sort of ideas, again, coach them a little bit. And then and in this one, they might get stuck. This one's the hardest one. And it's meant to be a bit harder because the next exercise that they're going to do is going to be the big experiment to launch their business. And the idea of having a hard exercise right now is to then take our foot off the gas a little and make it feel like when they get to the next exercise, it actually feels much easier for them to do. So don't waste too much time if they're not getting this one. Just go, okay, no worries. This is a tough one, but I just wanted to show you this. And the whole idea here is that they took the actual screens and they tested them as paper prototypes. So they drew them out on paper with real data. And this isn't the real story or exactly how it went down, but the way to best illustrate it is to say, you can go to where people have lunch in an office building where you know that people tend to travel, and you can hold do business travel, and you can hold a sign up that says, I'd like you to try my app on travel booking. Sorry, if you're booking a flight soon, I'd like you to try my app, I'll buy you lunch. And then when people come to you, you say, okay, where are you going? And you get the information, and you then do a real search and get real information on flights, and you fill out one of these screens while they're buying their lunch, and then they'll take 10 minutes to do. And then you sit down and you present the screens to them on paper, and you say, okay, pretend this is a real screen. Here's the search results. What do you do next? And you get them to say, okay, I click here, or I go here and I type here, or I want to scroll down, or whatever it is. And if they're silent and they're just reading, you just say, hey, tell me about what you're looking at, and tell me what's going on in your head. And this exercise, then, it says market stall there. It shouldn't. But it focuses on the unique part, the user interface. It takes a day or so, and it measures the number of people who understood and the number of people who actually booked. So the people who looked at that and go, oh yeah, I get that. I see the timeline. And then they were really looking for somebody who goes, actually, that's the flight I want. Thank you. Because that's when they know that this is really, the test was, will it work for them? So now we get to the wrap up. Your decisions are only as good as your information. Now, this is a graph of a company that is going to they're going to die because they've almost run out of time, and then they finally launch something, and then they've learned a little bit of useful information about what their customers really want. When you wait too long to launch, you only learn a bit, and by then it's too late and you're dead. Whereas experienced entrepreneurs, they launch fast and improve in cycles. So when you launch the fastest thing you can, again and again, you learn what's important. And each time you learn what's important, you have better information and more time to try again. So by the time you're reaching the same amount of time as the person who was slow and wanted to get it perfect and didn't want to kick it out to a customer, you have way more useful information about what customers really want and what works and what doesn't. And this is what makes an experienced entrepreneur really work well. So I want to start an airline as fast as possible. Oh, and I have no money. What would you do? Now, this discussion is usually very short. It's like you just give this one 30 seconds. If somebody has an idea, let them say it. And then you go, okay, let me tell you about 2 companies that have done this that you might have heard of. the one is Virgin. And the crux of this story is Richard Branson. This is before he launched Virgin Airlines. He's traveling on holiday and he gets stuck. Flight is canceled, and everybody is now lining up at this ticket desk to get their flights changed, and they all have to wait a day or two or longer. And nobody's happy with the situation. And he thinks that this is stupid. He thinks he could do a better job. But then he goes, okay. He gets on the phone and he starts calling around charter airline companies, and he finds out how much it costs to charter an airline to be there that night, to pick everybody up. And then he, or not necessarily everybody, but to get a bunch of people. And then he just does the quick math and he goes, okay, I know how much each ticket needs to cost. And he just walks down that line of people waiting to change their ticket and saying, I can get a flight here tonight if I get 50 people to buy a ticket for £200. Are you in or not? And he gets enough people and he calls the charter airline back and he's like, okay, I've got the money, send the plane. And that's the beginning of Virgin Airlines. The customers prepaid. Next story, this is Surf Air. This is a recent airline that launched, and they launched on a business model that's sort of a cross between Uber and a bus company. So they noticed that a lot of people in California, especially rich people, they live in like sort of the wine areas of California, but then they work in either LA or San Francisco, and they travel back and forth every week, and they always travel through commercial airports. That's the main point, is that they hate commercial airports, but they're spending thousands on travel every month. So he does some quick math and works out that if he can get a whole bunch of planes and he can just fly them up and down the coast like buses, he could charge a subscription service for people just to pay and then jump on the next plane that's coming. And it's California, so they're always going up and down the coast every day. So they put out a landing page and they just say, yeah, I hear a question. Paulina?
No, I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay, sorry. So what they do is, again, they have no money. They put out a landing page that just says, it's going to cost $3,000 a month for the service, these 4 cities in California, and we'll just have planes going up and down the coast every single day. The first people, it's first come, first serve. So, the first X thousand people who sign up are the first people who get access to this service, but you have to prepay your $3,000 now. And for most of these people, $3,000 was affordable and it was worth it for them. Again, the starting point was good because the goal in their life of convenient travel was strong enough that it pulled them towards, and the obstacle of hating commercial airports and wasting all that time was strong enough for them to say, yeah, I'll put $3,000 now to be first in line for that service. And they got 1,000 people to sign up. They got way more people than they needed. So they had within 2 months, they had around $3 million, and then they started to lease planes and they got it off. They literally got it off the ground. So again, 2 companies that both started airlines with no money. So they didn't need millions for planes. So this is where you send them off. So this is sort of like this is the last thing that you've got to do. And if you're serious about your idea, this is the skill. You're going to sketch out a launch idea. You have 48 hours to launch your business idea, your information product, and make money. You have to make money in 48 hours. Take 5 minutes to design an experiment. And remember the experiment checklist. Go. And in this case, you don't really get them to share. You just wrap up the lesson. So the only way to know is try. The best way to try is to say small, fast experiments. You now have an experiment in your hand. So then we just do a quick wrap up. So share lessons, any lessons learned from today you guys want to share. And then this is a big point. So this is sort of the grand finale. It's like, you guys have done it. you guys are entrepreneurs. There is nothing more you need. If you want to start with your idea, you just start. There's nothing, you don't need to qualify in any other way. You have what it takes. And so if you want to start. And the best way to start is to keep it simple, because then the simpler you keep your idea, the more likely it is you can do it as a side project. And once it starts to make money as a side project, then you can expand. Now, before you go, feedback. So you send them to the feedback form. This feedback is stuff that we can share with you as a facilitator. And after you guys do it, it'd be great to set a specific meeting time to talk through it with you. And we'll also send you some feedback forms as well. But then this is the final slide. So as people have been writing for 5 minutes, and they've been on their computers filling out the feedback forms, just don't let people leave just yet. So you've kind of had applause here, like you're an entrepreneur now. If you want to start, like yay. Get the feedback and then say, but before you go, if you guys really want, like, and so this is where this is getting towards the 5 minutes. It's quiet, and you say, there are 2 ways I can help you. If you want to go with your idea and just run with it, I can get you a startup mentor. We have mentors at Source Institute that are willing to help you starting now. So if you're ready to go, they're ready to go. Come talk to me. I'll introduce you. The other thing, if you want to work with a startup, we have the Global Entrepreneur Program at ISIC. So this is a program where we can connect you as an intern in a startup around the world. So if you're interested in either of those, come talk to me and I'll set you up. And that's it. And so basically people can filter off if they're interested in one of these things. And this is obviously what we're interested in terms of delivering the programs, then they come to you. And if you have this came up before, Rita mentioned this. If you had like a slide or 2 on Global Entrepreneur or whatever other ISIC program you want to promote as the call to action, then now's the time to do that as well. So there's sort of 2 success cases that come out of this that we want to measure. One is that they start their idea, and the way we know that they started is they've said, I'm going to start it and I'll take the mentor. Or how do I get in touch with the mentor or whatever. So we want to record that information of who's interested in having a mentor because they're doing it. And then also who is now interested in maybe not launching something, but working with startups. And so then you collect that. And that's it. So
I'm pretty clear now with all the content and what I have to do, but I have one concern. It's connected with the English level of students or of people who are gonna participate is not really good here in Ukraine. So
okay.
I'm gonna deliver the workshop in Russian.
Okay.
And I have concerns about the videos because they are all in English. Should I probably make some, I don't know, sum ups of the videos? Can I put them on slides?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, there's a few options here. So one is to so the easiest way is probably to internationalize this, right? Is to say if you want to actually translate this into Russian, we could have the Russian version of it, and then we could also do possibly Russian subtitles on the YouTube videos as well, if that's easy, right? If that's easier to do than making new slides up, because then it's just really translation work. But the other thing to do is it's a bit harder to then also having to know the stories. Right? What I'm trying to do is it's possible that you could turn the videos into slides. By the way, when you go into let me show you this. you go to learn.thesources.co, and also in the any questions links, there's a link to more videos, which goes here. There are, so for example, unbiased opinion. So this is probably the most important video of the day, and this is a short one. The story is already written up here.
Mm-hmm.
So this could help you then know a bit more depth to the stories, and then come up with slides if that's what you wanted to do. And if you did that, that would be great. I'd love to then, to have Russian language slides and material would be useful, obviously, to share with other people who'd want to do this in Russian.
Yeah, probably. I think like the slides are quite understandable, and if something is wrong, like with the understanding, I can just translate slides for them. Mm-hmm. But I was just hesitating about the videos, so I don't really know. I don't really know with what level of English people will come. So probably I can try just to show them videos on English, but if I'll see that they don't really understand what's going on, I can just have like a brief like tell them the story.
I'd suggest that we so like I agree with you, but I think that you're so right on this. Like if we listen to him speak, they have strong like listen to the accents.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's, if somebody's English comprehension isn't great, that's not going to be the easiest thing to follow anyways. So I'm pretty sure that if you're concerned with this, it's going to be an issue. I reckon but you can see that we only have, so there's this video and then there's first customer contact, which is about 5 minutes. I honestly think let's just put subtitles on these videos if you have the time to write them up. We can stick Russian subtitles on here, and that should help you. That would help you save time. It's up to you. If you just want to if you want to in your first go round, just give it a try, and if they don't get it, then tell them the stories. Then then give that a try. But there's something to seeing the person, right? Like the real entrepreneur talking about it, rather than having it's like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy when it's somebody else, right? So like seeing like just Philip has a fairly clear American accent.
Ella is writing something.
All right. So what I like about stuff like this is that you're getting this look on his face as he's describing that I thought I had this figured out, and then I just went to another place in Kenya and I didn't have it figured out. So there's that element of realism, that what you're experiencing now is the same as these entrepreneurs are experiencing. This is the real deal for you. So the videos I think are like, they help with that. They're obviously in a workshop environment, they're not the greatest thing to keep jumping to video, but it does give this sense of realism. So yeah. Do you want to do? Yeah. So you make the call. Do you want to just keep the videos as is, or do you want to try doing a Russian translation?
Yeah, probably I'll try to keep videos like that, and if I'll see that something is wrong, I'll just translate it for them.
Okay. That'll be interesting to know how it goes. I think this is going to be a big issue as we internationalize this. So that feedback's really important, and whatever the whole program, we're running this as an open source program. So so the idea is that when you deliver it, anything that you need to change, you can then give that to us as feedback, and we because almost anything that we do for you is going to be useful for a wider group of people, right? So the idea is that, like, as an open source project, it makes sense to contribute back to the core, and then that gets shared, and then that's how we advance the whole thing together. So whatever goes on with you is going to be the in terms of language issues, is something that makes sense for us to address.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I'm clear about everything.
Okay. I see a note here. I see the slides have changed a bit since last time I went through them. As Pauline, I'm delivering the workshops in Polish, but I'm not worried about people's level of English. I also love the last slides offered help. Cool. Yeah, it gives us more credibility. Yeah, I think, like, to me, the goal of this whole thing is just to give people that first leg up, right? It's like they want to be an entrepreneur and something stopped them. And to me, the success is when there are people who either go, I get it, not for me. I think that's a success, because now they're closer to knowing what they want to do with their life. It's not being an entrepreneur, or it's not like this. Or they're like, I'm going to start, right? And so, yeah. And so in terms of credibility, when you guys offer that, point out that this is an early stage of this program in terms of the modification from the Oxford one ran for years and had very good results. Lots of entrepreneurs got their first step with it. And this version, where it's not being run by, but the Oxford one was run by an experienced entrepreneur. This one is designed to be run by us figuring it out together. But Source Institute, who created this, is still a bunch of entrepreneurs who just individually want to see you succeed. So yeah, so in terms of credibility, just pointing out that, like, the ethos behind Source and ISIC, and why these people are, like, why we do this, and just, yeah. So yeah, so it's a good time to sort of hammer it home and sell a little bit more. Yeah, so afterwards it'd be good to have feedback from you guys. We should talk through the feedback forms that the participants do, and then get feedback from you guys directly on this program, and also see what the measurements are, see how many people actually wanted a mentor or took up a call to action towards an ISIC product. Yeah. So any other questions?
No, I think not.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, that was a long run, 2 hours. Yeah. So just last points, just trust the slides. Just you're gonna get the hang of it over once or twice. Normally our rule of thumb is run it 3 times, and you've got it. But even if you miss something, or you think you're screwing something up, just hit next and keep going, because let's put it this way, the feedback you can expect and that we've had consistently, but it's by design, is that there's a lot of sort of repetition. It's a bit slow, but it's designed for a non-entrepreneur to teach entrepreneurship. And because it has that redundancy in it, it allows you as a facilitator to go faster and just skip ahead. And if you're stuck or you think you messed something up, just keep going. Just make sure you maintain the pace. The pacing is the most important thing for you to get. And if you lose, if you miss a point, you'll have a chance to pick it up later within these modules. There's these places where you can check it. And you can see the themes repeat across the modules as well. So once we start talking about how to think like an entrepreneur, this stuff comes up again in understanding, and comes up against in product design, and comes up again in experiments. So if you miss it in one place, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. But what is the end of the world is when you just go really slowly, because then you end up having to drop a lot at the end, which isn't super bad, but I guess I shouldn't say it's the end of the world. But what it does do is because it drags down the pace, it drags down the overall experience. And so that's the thing you can do as a facilitator, is that kind of energy and pacing.
Okay.
So last words. And oh yeah, not last words. I have yet to observe this by one of you guys in ISIC running it. So we've tried this twice already and it just hasn't worked. But if it's possible for you to like Skype me in or do a video call while you're running it, I can be your support while you're running it. And also it's useful for me because I get to see how this looks when somebody else is doing it. And that will help give me insight and feedback into how to improve it, which I think is important at this stage. So if that's something you want to do, please do it. Just let me know what day it is, and we can set. We can send me a cal invite, and I'll put it in my calendar and block that day, and be there for you if I can. So.
Okay. That's a good idea, but isn't it? Is it okay if I facilitate in Russian?
Yeah, it's still worth it for me to see.
Okay.
It depends on. I mean, it depends on the setup. But if I can see you or if I can actually, yeah, I'm just thinking how we'd set up screens. Because if I'm there and I can see how people are reacting, like then it would be more like we'd be checking in on the breaks, and I would have sort of been listening in and I guess just seeing people's expressions. No, actually, I would want to aim the camera at you and the presentation. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. So let's say if nobody else is up for it, then I would still like to see it in Russian. That's probably it's worth doing if there's not an English option. For me and for you, if you want me there just to be sort of watching over in case you have any questions or you want guidance, then I'm willing to do that as well. I'll still get something out of the Russian one. Yeah, I sort of, yeah, it's funny. Like I've done this with enough groups that don't speak English that so for example, when they're doing the group exercises, they're speaking another language, but I can still sort of look at what's going on and understand and still be able to help. So it's still useful.
Okay, great.
Well, that was a long yes. All right. Well, there's nothing else. Have a good night, guys.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And yeah, good luck and call on me if you need anything. I'm here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye now.